Hello, everybody. You're listening to Speaking with Accent. We are Accent Student Media, or Austin Community College's student news group. My name is Nathan Spear. I'm the editor-in-chief of Accent and a journalism major over at the community college. And I'm joined by
Joseph Hurt. I am the entertainment journalist for Accent. I'm also a RTF major. And that's enough about me.
Hi, I'm Marisela Perez. I'm also a journalist at Austin Community College. Right now, I've been helping with the promotions of Accent, and I also serve at the Student Government Association.
Hi, I'm Joshua Cirotto. I'm the political editor at Accent. I'm a history major and a member of the International Youth and Students for Social Equality at ACC.
Today we are at the Co-op Studios in Austin, and we have gathered some interesting topics throughout the week that have kind of sparked our interest, and we've done some research, and we're trying to start it out light with kind of like what are some of the benefits of being in a community college, which is something we can all relate to at this table, and certainly many of our audience members will also be able to relate to. So leading that conversation will be Marisela, who's looked into the topic throughout the past few weeks.
Yeah, so now that, well, at least me, I'm living in my last year at Austin Community College, so I've been thinking a lot of what has been like being a transfer student, what are the benefits, what are, the downsides. And apart from that, I also wanted to know more about like the history of community college. And it surprised me a lot because it started as a movement from Ivy League's leaders. So actually the president of the University of Chicago and a few others from, like, for example, the University of Stanford wanted to divide Ivy Leagues in a way that it was more about research. And they thought that general education was more on high schools than on universities. So what they wanted to do was like to divide between junior college and senior college. Mm-hmm. So what they started to do was like to promote high school to include programs like university level programs, right? But this high school then became junior college, what we now know community colleges. So what they were doing is that only the ones that could get an associate's or graduate from those junior college were the ones that could go to the senior college, right? So it was more like an elite kind of movement, like only these kind of people could actually transfer to these big universities.
But community college was like a necessary step, like high school almost, into going into like an advanced college? Exactly.
Like they wanted to, they don't want to take like general education on them because they thought like university shouldn't be like that. It should be more about research, like advanced research.
Like a focused study kind
of thing.
Exactly.
So like, that the first 2 years of university is more about general education. So they were like, that should be on high schools or another kind of institutions. But at the same time, in the 20th century, a lot of people were like, we need work. We need some kind of, professions. And that's when community college became more like a social movement of people trying to get like certain like certificates or like easy to do jobs. And that's when community college also became what we see now, which is like you can either transfer or you can just get a certificate on associates and do any kind of job.
That's kind of funny because I feel like there is such a stigma nowadays about like community college being just second high school. Exactly. So it's weird to think that in its origin it literally was just a second high school.
Yeah, exactly. So that surprised me a lot. And I think like thinking that into consideration and now seeing like how a lot of Ivy Leagues are actually looking for community college to join the universities, and how even a professor, Ted Hatchie, had said like how much liberal arts education is more in community colleges than the same Ivy Leagues. It's like tells you a lot how much our education has changed, or maybe also students in regards how we see education itself. So I just wanted to ask you guys like how has been your experience so far? I know most of us have done like different kind of like courses and different timelines at ACC, but just hear your perspective, like what you like about being a transfer student.
Should we start with me?
Yeah, sure.
I think it feels underwhelming in a lot of ways. It feels like second high school. I definitely relate to that, but I don't know. Like I see people on like Snapchat and Instagram, and they're having a lot of fun at like these 4-year universities, and it just feels like, damn, like why didn't I go there? But I think it is definitely like a great opportunity, and it is like what you make out of it. And I think it helps people save a lot of money, and it's like it's really cool, maybe a little bit underwhelming at times, but I don't know. That's what I think.
I can agree partially. Like definitely with like the objective things with like it's a money saver and like there's definitely so I'm also like finishing off my journalism degree over at Austin Community College. So I've been there for a couple of years now, 2 or 1 over 1. And so yeah, there's definitely like initially starting out definitely that feeling of like, oh, I'm missing out on that 4-year experience like with dorm life and all that like sort of dorm life was a big one for me and like that sort of sense of community. But I like the reality of like a community college and that like it's not just like people I guess of the same age group, like doing the same things or like kind of having a similar backgrounds almost, or just like being formatted into having similar lifestyles. Like with dorm life is like they're living identically almost. But with Austin Community College, it feels like there's a lot of freedom of like course choice and stuff. Like you could. I think a big problem is taking courses at Austin Community College that are like general education courses is just because like that's what I was doing initially, and that's just kind of like not exciting. And it's like I could be doing this at a 4-year, and so that's what's disappointing. But what I couldn't be doing at a 4-year is taking like jewelry making classes for like really cheap, or like going to like the student farm, in Elgin, or doing all these like music credit classes, that are like part of my interest, but not something I'd be wanting to drop a bag on at UT for. You know what I mean?
Something I noticed is like there's a real sense of like, not everyone, of course, but I think there's definitely a lot of people who are, this is like their life, like this is their goal, and like they're going to do anything to get there. And this is like one opportunity for them. They're really making use of it. That's something I noticed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with what everyone said. I really like the diversity. The saving money is definitely a big plus. I am looking forward to transferring next year after this next semester, but I wouldn't say I regret missing out on the first 2 years at all. I've enjoyed it here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where is everyone transferring, if I can ask?
UT.
You got it.
UT.
I think everyone's gonna apply to UT.
Yeah, I think that's the big consensus.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam?
Probably U of H or something. I mean,
I'm also gonna apply to University of Houston.
I'd love to do UT. It just
My
is a
favorite-
lot more. Sorry, continue.
Sorry about that. My favorite teacher in high school went to U of H.
Oh, really? What was the subject?
Poetry.
English.
Oh,
Poetry.
really?
Yeah, I study poetry.
That's cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They have a really cool like script writing, like playwriting, like courses there, and like they do have some like film stuff. Obviously, it's overshadowed by the Goliath that's UT, but I just mean like with UT, it's kind of just it's more choosy on like who's getting in. It's not its acceptance rate is like really low.
Yeah, and I also think that in community college you have like, the opportunity to have like more personalized education. Like the classes are not big. You get that opportunity to talk with your professor, to maybe get to know your classmates a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of scared of like transferring and getting that shock of like, 40 students in one class, and then you're so like away from the professor, you barely listen, and then you're all scared to go into office hours.
Yeah.
I'm kind of scared of that, and like how easy it is to get lost in the
I feel like
between the people. Yeah,
I feel like ACC is pretty coddling in that way. Like you do have so much access to these resources like counseling and like your class selection, and also financial aid. Like what you were saying with like personalizing your degree plan is like kind of like what I was trying to reach at earlier is like, so like me personally, I've been doing this journalism track, and a lot of these courses I was doing in an early college track in high school. But and so it's just like, kind of repeating stuff. It's more fun because like the ACC environment is cool and I'm choosing my own stuff. But the personalization comes in and has come in this latest semester because you can open up the amount of majors you're doing. Like you can do 2 majors covered by financial aid, as well as like multiple certificate courses. And so I'm talking
cool.
like continuing education programs, like the music credit courses. Like I'm taking like a digital synthesis like degree plan course, like just for funds, and it's covered under financial aid.
What is that? I'm not familiar with
It's
that.
like so GarageBand is the entry level, but like like MIDI, like just going into like music production kind of things, audio engineering, like but the minor stuff. So it's like for the working musician. One of the classes I'm taking is like a mini rock band class. It's called Small Commercial Ensemble, and basically it's just 10 students split into groups of like just like related instruments or interests, and then you can just have a supervised band by this
That's so cool.
the professor's like in a local shoegaze band.
Oh my god.
I know. So it's like pretty cool. It's just really cool that how accessible it is. Like all of
Yeah.
that's covered under financial aid, and I can just do it. Like
So is that a part of your degree plan? Like you're getting credit for that?
I
in
made
your-
it a part of my degree plan by opening up my what's it called? My what degrees I'm going after.
Okay, cool.
hypothetically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just really easy to do all that.
Yeah, and like as you say, it's so flexible, like to switch your majors, as just to add one. You know, it's like you can do that. I think in a 4-year university. As someone that has changed her major so many times, it's just so good to have that because you're not stressing out. You can just have different classes and have an advisor. So it definitely helps if you're like someone that is not like that clear about what you want to do in the future. I think. Yeah.
Okay. What's the worst part of community college for you guys? I want to be negative for a minute.
I would definitely say like early on, I would have definitely agreed with you. I do Uber driving for a while, and so when you're going downtown Austin, you're going to see flocks of like college students that are the same age as me, and they're all friends hanging out and right next to their campus, like walking around. And even my parents both went to UT, and they're always talking about it. So it definitely is almost like a FOMO feeling, like with dorm life and like missing out on that element of like shared like youth community, I guess, you know what I mean? Like in a college space, seeing like that stuff you see on TVs. But I feel like one, in this economy, it's
In this economy.
and it's unrealistic, and two, it's also very much idealized. Like it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like the movies have kind of propagandized it a little bit because I feel like life, if like as someone who's like living for themselves and like has siblings who did the dorm life thing, it's like the flexibility and freedom of like being able to like have that independence as opposed to just like living under a school is like really cool. Is a really cool thing. So I guess
For context, this is my first semester, so I don't have as much experience under the belt as Adam.
right.
I think on my side is like if you don't have like a good advisor or you don't know pretty much the resources, it can be very, very confusing to get around and find like the right courses you have to take. Like if you're paying out of pocket, then you might waste money if you took the wrong class. And then apart from that, you worry about the credits that you have. Like, are they going to transfer? If not, are they going to reject me because I have so many credits? And also, all the college application of like, okay, I have to, it's not only about having a good GPA, I think. It's about actually, being involved with something that you have a good resume to upload. So it's so many things that to be a transfer student that it gets a lot of anxiety, especially during the college applications, right?
Yeah, I think timing is a big thing that's been a problem.
Timing is a big thing.
I feel like I'm never aware of when I should start looking at transferring or like when I should be applying for FAFSA, just because like it's not as relevant to me in community college, but it is going to be relevant to me when I transfer.
Yeah. And, if you don't pay attention, you might get lost real quick. And then you're going to be like, it doesn't matter, but it does. So I think like I don't know how is the high school experience here in regards to applying to university. I don't know if it's harder from a freshman perspective or a transfer perspective, but I know like freshmen have more like more chance in a sense that the amount of like students that can be accepted in a university as transfer student is lower than freshmen. So I think you're always competing a lot if you're a transfer student.
What do you think, Josh?
I don't like having to transfer because I have to do the college applications all over again.
Right. Yeah, it's just like we did a mini application to stall for this bigger one later, is what it feels like.
I hate the bureaucracy, and I mean, it sounds so college student of me, but I hate how like you go to one department and they tell you just to go to another one, and then they tell you to go back.
sucks.
And it's just like an endless
Yeah.
circle.
That's a big thing with ACC too. Is it's just such a big school.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, it's 50 years old. Happy birthday! But it feels like it's so new as well. Like
Yeah.
it's changing so much. I feel like there's departments that are getting total reworks and stuff. So like it's like finding access. Like it seems like sometimes they don't even know where those resources are accessed at the moment because like it's been changed recently.
No, I had a really rough time to find a good advisor. And even I went in person, they were like, sorry, there are no appointments and all of that. And they didn't seem to care to help me. So I found another person that was an advisor, and she just helped me to find one for me. So it's like, if you don't know people, they're not going to help you sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's very stressful.
I will counter that though and say that my experience with advising has been really
really good.
It has been really good. Like we shouldn't disparage them too much because personally
it's
I've
just
benefited
by
a lot.
chance though. Like you just like get a good
Right.
advisor or not,
Yeah.
and it kind of just it sucks.
It's a process for sure, and especially because advisors are so necessary at this stage, like this college stage, like in
Yeah.
transfer colleges, you need a good advisor, and so like having easy access to that one
So
is important.
that is the time for this segment. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
Cool. So who are we moving on to? Did we want to do Joseph? Did you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I'm open to that. So my topic is I asked everyone to find a movie or TV show that they're interested in that recently came out and kind of just talk a little bit about it. Like what are you guys excited about? So I want to start with Marisela.
Okay. Well, I think you know which one I'm going to talk about because we watched it together. But we recently watched The Boy and the Heron, but it's actually the translation would be How Do You Live? That's actually the name in Japanese. But it's by Studio Ghibli, and Hayao Miyazaki directed it, and he created the story. And it's the first film in 10 years that Studio Ghibli released.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they did it like without marketing, without trailer. They just pretty much put it out there. And I really liked it, but basically the plot is about a boy called Mojito, right? And he just lost someone really important in his life. And it's during during war in Japan, and they just have to move to another part of the country, or is it England? I remember.
No, it's another part of Japan,
Yeah.
and so he loses his mom. That's not really a spoiler. His mom dies in a fire, and they move to their aunt's house, which is like in the Japanese countryside.
Yeah, and then he starts like seeing this kind of weird bird, which is the heron, and that they start like a relationship or like a friendship, and this heron is gonna take him to this kind of world between the living and the dead, and that's where he's gonna like basically explore his own grief, but also like explore this magic world where he's gonna find another family members and all of that.
Cool. So for those that don't know, Studio Ghibli did like movies like Spirited Away and
Yeah.
like Princess Mononoke and
Howl's Moving Castle?
Howl's
which is
Howl's
amazing.
Moving Castle. Yeah. So do you think it was keeping true? Like, how do you think it compares to those previous like iconic works?
I don't want to hype it up too much, but it's my favorite. No, it's my favorite Studio Ghibli movie.
Yeah,
I think it's his best thing. I mean, he's been doing this for so long, and it's just like
I think it's crazy how he just never runs out of creativity and imagination.
It's a new story.
It's a new story.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like a mix of everything you have seen. Like you see these kind of patterns of like, magical creatures, like spiritual concepts, or this kind of spiritual travel that the main character has to go through.
and war. I mean, Japan
And
and wartime.
war.
That's like a big thing.
It's
for him.
actually the I read that is his most personal film, because first when he was a child, his dad worked in a manufacturing air force, and that's what the boys' fathers do. And also during creating his film, he had this idea of like that each character will have like a meaning, right, of the people that exist in real life. So he's the boy, and then another. Let me find his name. Is it the co-founders of Studio Ghibli, Takeshi Honda? No, sorry. Hisao Takahata was he died in 2018, and he symbolized the great father, the great uncle.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so he changed the whole storyline because he couldn't deal with the grief. Like he completely changed that, and it's also about his own grief, right, in the story. And this boy and the heron is basically like a film for his grandson from when he's gonna,
So yeah, that movie was amazing. If you guys have a chance to check it out, definitely watch it. It's in theaters with sub and dub, which is really cool. So let's go to Josh. What's your movie?
The Killers of the Flower Moon is my favorite that I've seen recently. I also saw this with Joseph. So the premise is that there's this Indian tribe, the Osage, that I think it was minerals or something that was found on their land, and so they get royalties from that. and so they're very wealthy, and they have white neighbors that basically try to steal that from them, and it really focuses on a marriage between a female member of the Osage tribe and this white dude, and so
Leonardo DiCaprio.
yeah.
Oh, that white
And
dude.
so that is the premise of the film.
Okay, cool. Well, and you enjoyed it? Isn't it a longer film as
Yes,
It's over 3 hours
yeah.
long.
Yeah, it's way too long.
well? Too long, you think?
It was too long for me, I guess.
It was
Okay.
worth it for me.
Yeah.
Well, Josh did fall asleep.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
was
you weren't
thinking
supposed to say
right now.
um,
For like 10 minutes.
For
He was-
a third of the movie, which
That's
is like
not
3
true.
hours long.
No.
cool. What were the like kind of themes it was speaking on? So it's like an Indian tribe. Is it like the director like close in that sort
It's
of?
Martin Scorsese.
Oh wow.
Martin Scorsese. It's not
Oh,
Scorsese.
excuse me.
He's my god. Okay. Cinema's
Scorsese.
beloved.
that's a red flag for a lot of people for you to say that on air right there.
Really? Martin Scorsese?
Is your god? Yeah, I think
Well,
so.
he's universally beloved, I think, as far as filmmaking goes.
Yeah, he just has that stigma about film bros about him. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
I'm kind of a film bro. It's fine.
Cool. You're moving on to mine, or
Yeah, I mean, did you have anything else you want to share about it?
Not really. That's it.
I think the movie's really visually amazing. I think it has a lot of cool people: Jesse Plemons, Leonardo, Robert De Niro, and then there's the Osage actress. She gives a wonderful performance. She's really good. It is really long, but yeah.
cool.
So Adam,
Well, I'm sticking with the holiday spirits. And I did a film I watched recently. I don't know if it's still in theaters. I don't believe so. But it's called The Holdovers, directed by Alexander Payne. He wrote it with David Hemmingson after they saw this old French film in 1935, and it had a similar plot, which I thought was interesting. But basically, it's set in 1970s New England. It's got this boarding school. You're in this boarding school with a bunch of classic like boys, and it's honestly like got this very vintage feel. They didn't use film cameras, but they used a vintage film coloring to kind of give it this feeling of like you're watching an older movie, like you're watching not like that a classic film, but
something out of the 70s. For
Yeah,
sure.
like-
and I had no idea they used digital cameras. For
yeah,
that.
it
looks like vintage.
it was like one digital camera and that they focused on, but they used their cinematography was like their post production on that was like really impressive. I feel like because it does look really good. I think The Graduate is a comparison that gets called on a lot, and
Definitely.
it's just kind of like its look and sort of feel. But it's set in this boarding school in near Boston in the 1970s. It follows these boys who have to stay over at their school, Barton boarding school or some Barton Academy. They have to stay over for the holidays because their parents aren't able to take them, and so they're under the watch by one of their professors who's like really strict and kind of notoriously very tight and not very well liked among staff and the other students. But soon as like time continues, there's one boy who thought he was originally going to leave. His name is Angus, and he thinks he's going to leave. He ends up actually needing to stay because his mother can't like take him over the holidays because she's going on a date with his stepdad or something. And so he ends up having like a bonding moment with like a really like visceral, not visceral, but sort of
a coming of age.
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
Is it a coming of age?
Yeah, I think
I would
in a
for
way.
him definitely. I would say so.
The movie itself is sort of like Catcher in the Rye. If anyone's read that, it has similar vibes. I think.
Okay, cool. Like in what like the main character?
In the way it's kind of like an angsty, teen going around the city.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know. It's let me read what I have written here. I just really like it's almost like it just feels very homey and simple in its nature, but still very effective in getting you to have like an emotional reaction to it, and that's almost amplified by its simplicity. Like so you're just following like the relationship between Paul Hunnam, the history teacher played by Paul Giamatti, and the student Angus Tully, as well as this cafeteria worker Mary Lamb, who had a son who recently died in the Vietnam War. I believe, after graduating from Barton. So it's kind of like following these different perspectives of that sort of old New England academic life, like just kind of like following. It's like a period piece, but a subtle one in that like you don't even really. It's timeless. In that you're talking about themes like war and academia and affording it and stuff, but also it's setting you in there because like the issues they're facing of like the wars, the Vietnam War, and like this sort of like the standards of the time are what's affecting them, and that sort of thing is what brings you into like that time period really effectively and gives you kind of an interesting look at it. I also think it's kind of funny. I think its humor is really effective. I think it does a lot of like physical humor, like physical comedy, not in like a ridiculous like Jim Carrey.
It's a little bit slapstick,
but like with the chase scene and like when Paul Giamatti, who like obviously he's just a funny looking guy, even without the lazy eye that they give him, which I feel like is a reference to Sartre, like Jean-Paul Sartre, who also had a lazy eye.
Really, I never thought of that.
I think it is because I mean they look pretty similar in the film.
And he smokes a pipe too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So. But anyway, like he has this like scene where he's like drinking and he like stumbles into bed, and I don't know, it's never like modern references or things that like seem like out of place or just like we're trying to get like a family laugh in, but it's just like, hey, these are just genuinely funny things that work within the story, and are just here to soften it up, and it's a gorgeous film. So I think everyone should watch it.
So I'm gonna push back a little bit. I didn't love it as much as Adam did, and for me, it's just like I didn't have as much of a personal connection to it. I had like a hard time feeling, I don't know, like in the mood, like just relating to it. For me, I think it's still good. I'm curious what other people think. Do you guys know? Have you guys seen it?
I watched the trailer and I was like, that looks bad. I'm sorry.
Wow. No, it's just a sweet little story. I will say the pacing at the beginning is a little weird. Like they introduce all these boys that are going to be staying over the holidays. And then like by the second act, like all of the boys except for Angus are gone. So it's like we've been introduced to all these characters and like these dynamics just for them to be kind of irrelevant until the last scene at the end. So I just thought that was kind of like,
I agree.
Like they were missing, like they just wanted to get to the story, but they had a weird way of getting to the story. But I think the story is just, I think that the performances are what really drives it as well. I think they're very real performances, and the chemistry was really vivid as well as it grows. And
the grieving mom, her performance was really good. I didn't love Paul Giamatti. I found him annoying.
Yeah, he definitely seems like a dated actor now. I won't say that too hard because I do appreciate him. My dad is a huge Paul Giamatti fan. My dad thinks he looks like Paul Giamatti. He's always like Paul Giamatti would play.
What does your dad look like? Oh my god.
Paul Giamatti.
He looks exactly like him.
I mean, pretty similar. Have you ever seen Fred Claus? That's another holiday movie.
No, I don't.
Paul Giamatti plays Santa Claus in the movie Fred Claus. It's a really good movie. It's about Santa Claus's brother, and my dad thinks he looks like Paul Giamatti in that movie, which is pretty funny. No one will care about that because no one knows my dad.
I do though, but I don't think they look alike.
Anyway, so yeah, I just highly recommend it. I think I'd never seen the boy Angus's actor before. But I think he did I think he did a really strong job, like stronger than like a lot of actors his age that I've seen on there before. Personally.
So that's the holdovers. I'm gonna get to mine really quick. I'll try to be fast. The one I chose was Zone of Interest. It's an A24 movie, and the synopsis is a Nazi commandant tries to build a dream life for his family near the Auschwitz concentration camp. So it comes out. It came out 2 days ago. I've yet to see it. It came out December 15th. It premiered at Cannes and won the Grand Prix and International Film Critics Award. So there's definitely a lot of hype around this movie, like especially in more art housey circles.
What drew you to it?
So it's directed by Jonathan Glazer, and he directed the movie Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, where she plays like an alien who seduces men and murders them in Ireland. I loved it. I thought it was great, really unsettling and creepy and weird.
I've never heard of that. When did that come out?
That came out like 2017, 2016, I think.
Okay, cool.
And I don't know, if you watch the trailer, like there's something really strange about the movie, and I love that stuff. So that's That's for me.
I think it's funny. We should. Sorry, get off topic. But you said we should all pick movies that haven't come out yet, or
And
like
then-
are released in theaters, and you're the only one. Like
Yeah.
we all picked movies we've seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, it did take us a while to get to this point, so I don't blame you guys too much. But yeah. So we should go to the next topic. Do you want to do Josh or you, Adam?
Either one is. You want to do me? Okay, cool.
Josh is last, saving the best for last.
Of
So
course.
mine is a little meta, I guess, in that I'm going to be talking about like kind of just some related to some like debates and like discussions we've been having recently about what the role of journalism is and how it's changed since like it began being popularized maybe in like the early 20th century, specifically with like having neutrality and or like objectivity. So I was reading this book called The Invention of Journalism Ethics by Stephen J. A. Ward. And I swear it was available on the ACC database at some point. I've been looking more recently and it's not where I left it. Like it's not where I thought it was, which is really weird because I did read this whole book like and I wouldn't have been able to like purchase it. So I don't know. If you're able to find it, it's The Invention of Journalism Ethics by Stephen J. A. Ward. And basically, he just goes into kind of he starts out with the ideas of the importance of objectivity in journalism and also like where it comes, like the history of it. So like why objectivity became important. And so for just kind of a definition purposes, objectivity is the idea of trying to present reporting without any like of your own personal bias or information or interpretation into it. So he goes into talking about the, I should preface this by saying he is a defender of objectivity in journalism, but he gives the history in order to give an idea as to why the traditional objectivity that is used in journalistic practice isn't something that is suited for modern life. Because it was suited maybe in the 20th century and does have its merits in that it's important for people to be able to receive information without, as little filters as possible, but also in a realistic way in that eliminating filters is not eliminating bias is not a perfect science. You know what I mean? It's pretty much impossible, but there are ways to adapt it into where we can keep sort of the key elements of that objectivity in modern life. So I guess I'll start with just saying like the history of it was really what was interesting to me is it started post World War I. America and like kind of modern life was having some huge problems with a little thing called propaganda. It was crazy. And so people were like realizing, the power of if press is working with the government or press is working with ideas, then like that's going to have crazy, like that's incredibly effective because people's information are like swayed as well. And so like another thing that was kind of like leading people towards understanding the power of like public opinion is the big thing is like if you have control over public opinion, you've got control over everything. And so that was being like, talked about with like intellectuals, like, like Marxist theory and all that is like the public opinion is the big thing that people want. So, getting access to controlling public opinion is super easy when you have media working with, an entity with an agenda. You know what I mean? And another thing was like Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays. Bernays is like a little more, I think he's like related to Freud actually. Like he's like a nephew of Freud, Bernays. But they're the fathers of public relations. And so they kind of were like, so since, neutrality is we look at everything with glasses colored by our own interests and prejudices, then they started forefronting like pseudo propaganda efforts, but like that are still used today with press statements. So like when corporations, they believe like corporations should just give out their news directly kind of thing, so they'd give out these press statements that are just like idealized forms of what they're saying. And they would rationalize it by saying that this objectivity was inevitable anyway. You know what I mean? Because like subjective philosophies are going to be everywhere. But it was kind of just a way to like really get in there with sort of using media for like a enterprise gain. You know what I mean? Like private enterprise gain. And so this guy Ian Lippman, I think is his first name. I could be wrong on that. I don't have the first name written. He comes in and he's like, this is pretty much one of the only instances of like journalistic philosophy we have, or at least most recently, and it's about like his response to this sort of like state of journalism not having this objectivity. And so he was actually a lot more liberal with these like beliefs about like enforcing this reformation and these ideas. And then he comes back seeing this propaganda, seeing the effects of like the media working with an agenda. And so he's the one that was kind of like setting up this, like he contributed to newsrooms setting up their sort of like list of things about what is objectivity. So like Littman was kind of enforcing factuality. So reports are based on accurate, comprehensive, and verified facts. Fairness, reports are on, so for B is fairness, reports on controversial issues balance the main rival viewpoints and represent each viewpoint fairly. C, non-bias. D, independence, reports are the work of journalists who are free to report without fear or favor. Non-interpretation, so reporters do not put their interpretations or opinion. And neutrality and detachment, so reports are neutral, they do not take sides in a dispute. And so this is when like those sorts of things that are like commonly like professed in like newspaper rooms and newsrooms were put into place. And the author Ward argues that was done because it was what the society was needing at the time for journalism, you know, as a response to like what was going on around the world, and like a fear of public opinion. This is what they were wanting from journalists. And this is like the most valuable determined thing. But now that's incredibly different. Like we have, especially as Ward points out, is the use of non-interpretation and neutrality and detachment are the big ones that are just like not as relevant to today's world. And they were kind of like even like looking at that even back then with stuff like the muckrackers, which kind of were part of starting this. They were exposing. They made like exposés about like J.D. Rockefeller and the meatpacking industry. And so like there was journalism that was like outside of this objectivity that was really effective. And so like looking into that sort of thing, Ward is kind of coming up with this pragmatic objectivity is what he calls it. And so it's just like a different set of standards that are more, I guess, focused on keeping factuality and fairness, but also keeping, you know, the writer's input and the journalist's like passion into it. And like, cause that's what's relevant, and interpretation is possible and also inevitable. So we shouldn't try and like pretend like it's not there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like it's the ideas of like his sort of pragmatic objectivity is kind of focused on having research, focusing your intentions on finding the truth of the matter instead of finding the truth that you're wanting to find. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And also is like based on getting those second opinions, getting those second reviews, having it looked at, you know, like publishing it and making it aware that this is what you're arguing for something, you know, or like this is what you're believing, but having it, you know, looked over, combed over, and not treating like your opinion as the correct one, as in because it's yours, but as in because you're trying to find the truth, and this is like the truth for the public good. You know what I mean? And so this is the truth for the, like what you believe the truth for the public good is, after going through like the processes of reaching out to like the public, getting those second opinions, and like kind of finding that sort of objectivity within the restraints of your own bias. You know what I mean?
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, you're all good.
I was gonna say, let's kind of open this up to the room. Does anyone have anything to say?
So I did reach out and I was like, let's find some sort of like examples of maybe ethical dilemmas in like journalism, or just like some sort of like complaints or like things in journalistic news that has happened recently that we could talk about.
As far as how the media today approaches just simply reporting the events, as you say, I don't think that really exists very much. To give an example, with Julian Assange and other whistleblowers, they've either been blacked out by the corporate press like New York Times, other sources, or they've been slandered and attacked as terrorists, as a threat to national security, and they haven't been defended. Yeah, so like a lot of the problems with the corporate press is that they're like still kind of holding on to these traditional views of objectivity, but like not accounting for the fact that they are like
a lot of the times pocket money controlled and stuff. And so like a lot of the things that you'll see with reporters like that who are taking a stance of like having their own interpretation and like publishing journalism that is like, kind of like taking a stance on something, maybe not, presented as like there's clearly a point to this, I guess, and it's controversial, is that you'll see like newsrooms that are following this traditional objectivity will stray away from that because it's proof that like it's just further evidence that the journalists that they're employing are not following that traditional objectivity. Does that make sense? So like when you have like examples like the journalist who was fired, or the several journalists who were fired from the New York Times for like supporting Palestine or like voicing their support, well, they were doing that like purposefully with the knowledge that they would get fired because like that's just within the rules of like those sort of traditional objectively aimed journalistic like practices, is like you can't express your opinions like because it has to be under the guise of that non-bias. Now, I'm not saying that non-bias isn't there, and that's why it's partially problematic to deny that you're having that bias, like by like, not allowing these sorts of journalistic or like silencing these voices, because like it's denying the fact that your own bias is there.
Right. I would say that it would be my opinion that it's the responsibility of journalists really to stand up in cases like the genocide going on in Palestine, especially in the context of how it's been reported. To make a broad generalization in the media, it's been very pro-Israel. But with the point of Julian Assange, I would argue that he was a non-biased reporter. He was just a whistleblower. He was just giving the straight facts, like exposing documents, exposing what was going on in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he wasn't supportive of that because of the bias so how it happened was the New York Times actually went and published the documents with him, but then later on, they would go on to attack him and refuse to defend him when he was persecuted by many different governments. Right now, he's in Belmarsh prison in the UK, the high security prison where they keep rapists and murderers, and he's doing that just because he exposed war crimes, and none of the people he exposed are in prison. But they don't follow those traditional rules, was my point with that.
Well, yeah, I think so. With the way that, the New York Times, especially because it's like kind of more of sort of, I guess, political news sort of thing, is they have. Yeah, I agree completely with, especially with the Palestine conflict. Like, there is a need for having like that journalistic voice, and like I think there's more power in a journalist that is speaking through their passions. But I think the idea is, especially with like this pragmatic objectivity, which isn't like Ward is not saying that this is what is used modernly. He's saying this is what should be used in modern times. Is like that you have these interpretations, and you're doing the effort to kind of like look at the other interpretations and include them, and you're just doing the fullest extent of looking for the truth as opposed to looking for proof of your own ideas. And so it does sound like the journalist you're talking about was like following that, and it seems like weird about that response, like ridiculous. It's very unfair, and just shows like some of the problems in like the modern press. Especially when they're trying to work under this guise of like traditional objectivity. And so that's what I mean by like a guise of traditional objectivity, is that like it's like when they are shutting out bias in their workplace, or like, like shutting out people with extremist beliefs, is because they're working with sort of a guise of traditional objectivity, because people with extremist beliefs don't work with writing objective pieces, if that makes sense.
So I kind of wanted to piggyback off of you guys. The article that I brought was not really an article, but I wanted to talk about Noam Chomsky and like his critique of the New York Times. He wrote a book called Manufactured Consent, where he kind of like digs into the New York Times and how they are really influenced by corporations and how they take advertisements and stuff, and that affects the way that they view a lot of situations. And
Right.
I think especially through that guise of objectivity, like it allows them to defend a lot of stuff that shouldn't be defended. I mean, I'm not a journalism major, so this is
Right.
not my expertise. But did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, what I read was The Freedom of the Press by George Orwell, which was a preface that was in Animal Farm in the original manuscript. And in here, basically, he talks about like the censorship from publishers. He was a journalist apart from being a writer. So that's why I thought that was really interesting. But what he says that happens a lot from like publishers or editors is that, and I'm going to read it here. If publishers and editors exert themselves to keep certain topics out of print, it is not because they're frightened of persecution, but because they're frightened of public opinion. So I think that's really interesting because I think that happens a lot in regards what corporations or maybe even in a like individual level we don't say of keep from saying because of public opinion, not because we think we don't have freedom to say it, because we know the freedom is there. So maybe that happens a lot of that journalist level of corporations that they don't want to bring more conflict, or they just want to go with a set agenda not for being afraid of the government, but for public opinion, basically.
Right. Yeah. Like for just like keeping, and a lot of it is also like ties to like who's in their back pocket. You know what I mean? Like, so like besides just like how the public will view their news stories, because I feel like with a lot of like that big press, like corporations, is like we can talk about the unethicality of like the New York Times' practices, but like people aren't going to stop reading the New York Times, so they just feel more comfortable in subtly exercising organizations like the New York Times, I will say.
So that is all the time we have for Adam's segment. Let's go ahead and move on to Josh's. Do you want to go ahead and introduce it?
Yes. So to wrap up today's segment, today's episode, we mentioned this before. I'm going to keep us updated on the genocide in Gaza, and we can have a discussion on that. So right now the death toll stands, the official death toll stands at over 16,000, 10,000 of them children, 7,000 people missing, presumed to be dead. So every day Israel just continues to drop bombs coming from the U.S. on and using U.S. funds on the heads of innocent Palestinian people. It's very much a genocide. It's a textbook case of genocide, as one UN official said. I forget his name, but they're bombing UN schools, hospitals, all with really at the behest of the U.S., because Israel is a proxy of the U.S. in the Middle East. As Joe Biden said, it's the best $3 billion investment that the U.S. makes. And if there was not in Israel, the U.S. would have to invent it, because it's the key police force of the U.S. in the Middle East. But at the same time, there continues to be mass opposition. So the key really is to direct that opposition. Also, I wanted to highlight the targeted assassination of Rifat al-Rir. He was an activist, poet, and he had actually wrote a poem right before he died. He had mentioned that he said that if he died, it was Biden and Kamala Harris's fault. So very powerful. Just along the same lines as in many protests, you'll hear Biden, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. And Brian Cox, the actor who played Logan Roy in Secession, read that. I recommend everyone listening today go and watch that on TikTok. It's very powerful.
What's the name of the poem you said?
It's If I Must Die.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. I think it's also, it's a tragic situation, honestly. The power feels so limited, so far away, but, just keeping it in people's attention and like people aware of what's happening, to, be influenced towards like activism and influencing their politicians and making political decisions to like for a better future is incredibly important. I also think it's important to talk about maybe like the context of this conflict. I feel like there's a lot of talk about Palestine and Israel and not a lot of people people often don't go out of their way to like look at the history or of this conflict or like the kind of complexities of this sort of situation. And so, which I think is also really powerful for like the Palestine side, and like, you know, any side, just the side of the situation, in understanding like how these injustices like have started, or, you know, where they came from. So like with the idea of like, post World War II, you have all the migrating Jews and the UN with Britain, like it was like England or whatever decided to make Israel the place to drop them off, all the Jewish people that were migrating, and so it was basically establishing like the country of Israel within the people of like Palestine, you know, not with their permission, and then eventually they just kind of leave all those Jewish people there. And so obviously conflict is going to start between the two parties there, especially when the Jewish communities are expanding pretty rapidly, especially post conflicts, and repeatedly when conflicts are happening, because of the connection that Jewish community has had with, you know, the Westerners who have for some reason have such a play in this situation. You know, repeatedly it's kind of like, and also like various sort of just, you know, like cultural reactions and like situations and just, you know, various like complexities. It seems repeatedly that the Jewish communities are taking the side and taking the victories of like inhabiting this land, that they were dropped into without, you know, really permission by the people that were there. You know, it's kind of a textbook case of colonialism, and it's just really like crazy and strange to see the patterns that keep just continuing, and it really is such a spike of like this situation and like such a, you know, coming together of all these different circumstances coming to a head and exploding literally.
Right. So I would disagree that it's far away, because the bombs that are being used, the funds that are going to Israel are being made right here. They're coming out of our education, our social security and healthcare, and it's being done in our name. So it's very much relevant to everyone in the United States and other major European countries, really everyone around the world, because of the precedent it sets. But I definitely agree with you that it's important to understand the history of it, of Israel was founded on the displacement of the forceful displacement of the Palestinians through the Nakba, which has been continually referenced now, with Israeli officials saying, this is Nakba 2023, or this is the new Nakba.
What does that mean again? It's they have a meaning. Is that the holiday you're talking about, or?
Yeah, I think they celebrate, but it just means the displacement of the Palestinians when Israel was founded, basically.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Great Sorrow or something. Like, I'm trying to remember what the catastrophe or disaster.
Oh yes, it means catastrophe in Arabic.
Yeah,
you're right.
So like that just gives insight into like how, like what the stigma is, like what the long-standing sort of relationship between these two bodies is, and like where it comes from, and like the perspectives of it. Like if like they have a like historical sort of like day of remembrance called the catastrophe, and where like there's systemic support for the side that had caused that holiday. It seems kind of I shouldn't say holiday, but that day of remembrance. It seems kind of apparently problematic. You know what I mean?
So a question I want to ask you guys is, I personally am not as knowledgeable about the situation, and I feel like maybe a lot of people are not as knowledgeable as you guys, and like there's like a real sense of hopelessness like with what's going on. It feels like really anxiety inducing. So I want to ask each of you individually, like, what do you think you can do?
Right.
Like what can we do just as like, people over here, students over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to ask Adam first, and then Josh.
So like, I think the idea is, well, there's just different schools of thought, I guess, with it. Is like, there's the idea of like Palestine like reaching its retribution in like with but to the extent of that is like what the big question is, because like there's the argument that like they should get their rightful land, like the land that was taken from also long ago, you know what I mean? And they should be facing the full support of this situation. But it's also like, with that, we face the fear of like affecting people that are outside of the situation. So like there's like Jewish communities that are living in that area that are unrelated, like just because of like historically it's unfair that they're living there. They're living there and their lives are being threatened. But really, I think the big issue with it right now is just the response that has been made to the needs, the needs of the Palestine community. Even though that request for needs was like a violent action, the response to it has been like an unprecedented violence, and not an actual response. It has been an attempt at extermination, it seems like, which is completely unjust. And so because the situation seems like it's just set up for Israel's victory, you know what I mean? Like there's just no, like systemically, Israel is getting no support. And people-wise, like they're not able to, like Palestine, I mean, systemically, Palestine is getting no support. And all these things, it just seems like Palestine's attempt to win at this through violent means seems not possible. So I think the most ideal way in a perfect world would be like a way for conflict first off to end, and then peaceful resolution, in that Palestine is compensated for a history of oppression that has been made, but in a non-violent way. Because like another point is that this anger that has been fueling for like decades long in the Palestinian people is this is I guess a generalization, is like has like shown up in violent action, and a lot of extremist violent action, and like the extermination of like the entire like opposing side, which I think is also like an unfair thing, just because violence is not preferable. But sometimes like it is arguable that it is at this point continuously been the only way to attract attention.
Mm-hmm. So let's hear from Josh for a bit.
Right. So we're faced with a huge contradiction here. We have these mass protests involving millions of people just in the United States alone. And on the other, you have this political establishment that is completely united in its support for Israel, Democrat and Republican alike. They're in lockstep, and they've only doubled down in response to the protests. They've had McCarthyite hearings expelling presidents of universities for not being tough enough on support for Palestine.
I remember didn't they pass a resolution like kind of
calling for the resignation, right? And the University of Pennsylvania,
denouncing students who were protesting.
Oh yes, they did. They called them terrorists.
Yeah,
that's insane. What school was that?
I think it was a general
Congress. They passed a resolution condemning student protesters.
Jesus, and that's so like contradictory with their own like. Because you can tell they're scared of like what's happening in Gaza. Like they keep being like, "Hey, Netanyahu, maybe calm down a little bit over there." It's hard to support you this much when you're doing all this. But it's
right,
like
with public opinion the way it is.
Yeah,
it's interesting because we were just talking about public opinion, but it seems that public opinion only makes them feel more isolated and causes them to lash out more.
Who?
The political establishment, the Democrats and the Republicans, even so-called socialists like Bernie Sanders, he's very virulently pro-Israel. Same with AOC.
Now he's a Jewish man, correct? Bernie Sanders.
Yes, but the the very premise that Judaism is equal to Zionism is anti-Semitic in itself.
Yeah.
Like many Jews have been at the forefront of the protest for the rights of the Palestinians because they see the same horrors of the Holocaust being perpetrated against the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. But back to the question of what can we do? We need to take this into our own hands. It's clear that the political establishment is not going to do this. And we need to follow the call of the Palestinian trade organizations to fight for strikes in the workplaces where these weapons are being manufactured, and just a political general strike more broadly to stop funding to Israel. And that's what's going to stop this. Not boycotts, not these protests alone. The protests are necessary, but they're not enough. And so what we need to do is we need to fight for these strikes. We need to organize, and ultimately, we need to fight to unite workers here and in Israel, in Palestine, because their interests are all united against a common oppressor, and ultimately fight for a one-state solution. Two-state solution has not worked. A secular state that gives equal rights to Jews and Palestinians. Many prominent Jewish as well as Palestinian intellectuals have argued for this.
One with like a connected government as opposed to, because it does seem like
Right.
the government bodies are the people are the bodies kind of creating this sort of religious discontent. You know what I mean? So I guess combining those government bodies into one effective one with outside of like secular, as you're saying, I could see that. Like, it just seems also like kind of unrealistic, enforcing like a government system in a country that's very distant from ours and with people that are very culturally different from us.
Right. They have to be. It has to be in their hands. And outside of the hands of U.S. imperialism, obviously. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that. They're the ones creating the religious discontent. Some people are saying, this has just been going on for centuries. It's just religious strife. There's no end to it. But no, it's really being perpetuated by these forces, like you were saying. I think that's a really important point. But really the only way to realize this state ultimately, outside of the interests of these major Western powers that have really created this situation, is through a struggle for international socialism. That is the perspective of the Socialist Equality Party, the group which I'm a part of.
You had to fit it in there. Huh?
So read the World Socialist website, fight for socialism, and fight for a strike.
To clarify, not everyone on this podcast believes in that.
Some opinions are each our own.
We didn't put the disclaimer at the front that
We'll do the
ACC
disclaimer. Yeah,
okay.
We'll record that later.
Opinions
So
are each our
with
own.
that, I think that's our time. Do we have any concluding thoughts? What did y'all think of the first podcast?
No, I thought it was really fun.
was
I think
very cool.
Yeah, very fun.
I was surprised. I'm very happy with how it turned out.
you were surprised.
Well, yeah, I had
Ever the pessimist.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, once you do research on something, it's fun to talk about it, I guess. I'm glad we have the space to do this. Thank you, ACC.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you,
ACC
Co-op.
Radio.
Oh,
Like
and
us.
Co-op Radio. I meant ACC for accent, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, if that's wrapping up everything, I think that's wrapping up the show then.
Yeah.
So
Thank you guys so much for listening. If we have any listeners.
Wait. I do have one point.
Okay. let's listen.
It's not me fitting it in there. Like the fight of all forms of oppression has to be united. It's an essential point. It's not.
I meant
it's not my agenda just being stuck on at the end.
No, I meant the Socialist Party plug.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was specifically talking about your plug for the IYSSE or whatever.
Or the SCP. So with that, I think that's it. Thank you.
Period.
Bye.
Bye, guys.